Okay, so we can start our webinar. We will wait just a couple minutes for all the participants to join. And it is a real pleasure to welcome everyone this afternoon to join us to this first webinar organized by EAP on beekeeping called Beekeeping Today. I will just share some slides for the introduction. So I think we can start. And so I welcome you all again for who joined in this last minute. My name is Giulietta Minozzi and I work from the University of Milan. And I have the pleasure to co-chair this webinar with Gerardo Caja, who is here. You see him on the screen, I hope, from the University of Barcelona. We are both very pleased that many of you have decided to join us, have registered, and have decided to have a nice afternoon talking about beekeeping today. So let's go on. So for who's not familiar with EAP, EAP is the European Federation of Animal Science since 1949 and has a study commission dedicated to insects. In fact, this commission has organized in January a workshop dedicated to insects genetic improvement in Athens in Greece. And as many of you know, EAP organizes annual congress that this year will be in Austria in 2025 in August. Let's come to our webinar today. So we have great speakers today that will touch several topics. We've tried to have as many topics as possible to give you an overview of everything. We will talk about EU current breeding panorama with Gerardo Caja. Then we will talk about beekeeping for rural livelihoods with Nicola Bradbear. Then we will talk about bee health. That is a special issue now with Kryger and Annette Bruun Jensen. And then I will give a talk on the genetics of honeybees. How is this webinar organized? After each presentation, you can write any questions you have in the Q&A box you find in the screen. And you may raise the questions and we chairs will decide, pick some questions and see. We have 10 minutes for the speakers to reply. The webinar is recorded and will be available for all EAP members in the restricted area, but will be available for everyone after 3 months in the YouTube channel. So this is what I had to say at the moment. See, many of you have joined us, and I would like to leave the floor to Andrea Rosati, Secretary General of EAP, who would like to welcome you and give you a few informations too.
Thank you, Giulietta, and thank you to Gerardo, who will co-chair with you this webinar and all the relevant speakers that we have today. And also welcome to every participant. So we had 277, if I'm not wrong, people who registered, and they will show up sometime. Some of them will follow from the beginning till the end, someone only part of that, but it's a very, very large number. EAP organizes monthly a webinar, the second Tuesday of the month. And we usually have a large participation, but this is one of the largest participation we had. Because of that, I want to say that we were positively surprised. There's so much interest about beekeeping. And when we thought that this webinar would be worth to be followed up by a workshop, a real physical workshop. So it was like a bet in the office. If you have so many participants, then why not organizing a workshop in the future, maybe next year or the following 2 years' time from now on. And so it might be an idea to do it. And I would love to have your opinion on this. If you think that having a physical workshop on beekeeping would be important for you, for your studies, for your interest, we will put on the chat a link. Okay, it's already there now. Please join, click on this link and say what do you think about the possibility that we will organize a physical workshop somewhere in Europe in the future. And so thank you very much. And Giulietta already introduced Eaap. I don't have to say much more than that. Only to remind you, as Giulietta said, that this webinar will be available for all Eaap individual members, and after 3 months, it will be public available. But if everyone is resident in Europe, can be member of the Eaap for free. Maybe not many of you knows. It's just for free. You have to go to the Eaap website, go to the registration, you can register, and then immediately you will be individual member and enjoying many of the services that we are doing, including the possibility to have this webinar immediately available. Having said that, I will not take much more time of your main reason to be here, which is hearing and discussing of beekeeping. So I'll give the floor again to Giulietta, who introduce the rest of the speakers, I guess.
So thank you, Andrea. I will give directly the floor to Gerardo Caja, so he will introduce himself and his wonderful talk.
Okay. Thank you very much, Giulietta. And I'm really pleased having this opportunity to talk about beekeeping and have the opportunity to express my opinion in so many critical aspects related with it. My name is Gerardo Caja, and I'm part of a group, interdisciplinary group in the Universitat Autonoma of Barcelona. I'm currently emeritus professor, but I'm fully devoted now to, after a past working with ruminants, basically, now I'm totally devoted to the beekeeping. Well, I will share my screen and start my presentation. Is it on place? Yeah, I assume that is on place. Well, my presentation have one outline, which is basically to review the bee family, speak about the panorama of honeybees in the world, and especially in the European Union. I know that this is a very important aspect, the pollination needs, and if they are enough or not bee availability. This is really important not only for honeybees. I included the position about the solitary bees, and it was very nice that they are a group of European researchers working on the prioritization threats and opportunities for honeybees in the current situation. And also, I want to stress different hot topics, basically to stress that conventional and integrated pest management, as you will see, are critical points. Also, the confrontation of conventional versus organic beekeeping. And I will not develop in this talk, but we need, and I want to stress that, alternative varroa treatments, because currently they are, well, this is the most important disease, as later one of our colleagues will describe. We have new alien pests, and also this need to be developed in the future, as well as considering that beehives and honeybees are also a livestock species. That means we need to work on the area of welfare indicators and not forget this. Well, you know that the family of honeybees are included in the Eaap. These are very large family. And it's very curious that you can see here the spread in the world is described as a bimodal and latitudinal distribution. That means in the center, you can see that there are not too much wild species. And in Europe, we have approximately the 10% of these species. We classify in a very general way solitary bees, which are the most important. That means we cannot forget them, 85%. And the other 15% is the social bees, basically the stingless, the bumble, and the honeybees. You can see that the sizes are really different. And this will need to be considered, because when I was making some pictures, and I'm bringing here a dandelion flower, I was focusing on this, which is a Panurgius bee, wild bee, solitary bee, but I don't realize in the moment that it was another one. It's a Micrandrena. That means we have in nature different size of bees. And if I'm comparing these wild bees with our honeybee, the size is totally different. But if I put in place also the bumblebee, you can imagine that really they need to focus on different flowers, and really the pollination is not a simple work. They need a specialization of different type of bees. This is the reason that if we go to the genus Apis, in which the most important and more known is the Apis mellifera, which is our Western honeybee, we have also another group of bees, another genus, which is the Apis cerana. These two are the most important honeybee producers, and they are also, they have one ability, which is to make nest, and they are putting the honey in cavities. This is the aspect that the human beings used, but there are other different bees, like, for example, the no cavity nesting bees, and some of them are giants, or you can see here, this is the Apis dorsata, more popular in Asia. The other, the Apis cerana, is very popular, but is concurring with the Apis mellifera because the productivity is not the same. But you can see that there are more genus of Apis in this no nesting cavity, no nesting in cavities. And also we have a dwarf bees, which is the Florea, Apis florea. The important thing of this small bee is supposed to be in Asia, but this year was discovered in Malta. And of course, it was considered as an alien and it was destroyed. But this is another secondary aspect of the globalization market. And really, we need to be very careful with these different types. Well, pollination is very important. And when we work in pollination, we need to be focusing in the flowering plants, and 35% of crops addressed to food are needing this pollination from insects. And we have now a clear idea that 40% of the invertebrate pollinators are currently at risk, and we need to establish the baseline data. But we are constant, and we need to develop new sampling procedures because most of the current traps are killing them. That means we need to develop, and this is one aspect to be done in research, sampling without killing the insect that we are studying. Well, we have also a strong decline in the European Union. Approximately 1 from 10 bees and butterfly are currently threatened, but the economical impact is huge. In the world is between 200 and 600 billion of euros, and in Europe at least 15 billion euros. There is also a big concern related to pollinators and bees in the European Union, and the respondents of the European consultations, they expressed their concern. But it's a very important question to give a clear answer. Are honeybees currently increasing or decreasing? And well, I bring here some results. This paper is really interesting from Eisen and Harder. They are presenting in this black line is the growth of the human population. And in red, you can see the growth of number of hives. In simple idea, you can observe that they are related. The other are considering the Russian Federation countries or USA, but you can see the red one, which is hives, and the black one, which is the human population, are quite parallel. Well, if you transport this in kilograms of honey, and also you put this according to the increase, the baseline here is 0 from 1960 to 2000, you can see that the growth is quite similar. But the interesting thing is, at the same time, the authors bring data from the cultures dependent from pollination from insects or non-dependent, and you can see that they are really very different evolution. If you also observe the honey production in the world, which is it's similar to the previous data, well, you can clearly observe that there are some changes important in the world, which is the crops dependent on pollination are increasing dramatically in the last years. The authors make the relationship between both criteria, the number of hives and the agricultural production of these dependent crops. And you can see that they are on a straight line, increasing but changing dramatically in the last years. And this change was basically as a consequence of the political crisis in the Russian Federation. Well, that means in general, we can conclude that they are an important evolution of a positive trend of honeybees in the world, which are distributed according to the FAO in many countries. The world production is 1.9 million of tons, and it's growing with some changes in 2018-19, and the same trend was observed in Europe. You can see that Europe in general is approximately 22% of the total world. Asia is approximately half, and you can see that other countries are representing less than the whole Europe. But this is not European Union. This is total Europe, because you can see also that in the world, China represents approximately a quarter of the total world production, Turkey 5%, Argentina 4%. I'm not including more data, but Mexico, Colombia, Brazil are really very important. India are also very important. And when we compare the European Union, you can see that approximately we produce half of the total Europe production, because some countries like Ukraine are really very important. In general, in the world, we have 10 kilograms per hive. One population is approximately 200 million of hives. And finally, if we agree that there is a linear relationship between a number of honeybees and human population, the interesting thing is that the average honey consumption is approximately 0.24 kilograms per inhabitant and year. The European Union, I will not give more big details, because I'm considering that the European Union is doing a fantastic work protecting the bees. And for example, you have this statement of the European Union Commission saying that honeybees are essential for the European Union agriculture and also for the environment. You can, and I invite you to consult this link. And we are fortunate because the European Union just published in this October, which is the current situation. This, you can see 20 million of beehives, and Europe is producing approximately near 300,000 tons of honey. Well, there are important changes in legislation. It was revised, the Honey Directive from 2001, and now is in place after June, a new directive related with blending and also labeling in particular. Also, the European Union put in place a platform to advise the Commission, in which many scientists and you are invited to participate. Also, the European Union has different lines of support to adapt to the common agricultural policy strategic plans with different types of interventions. For example, you have the regulation, you have here advisory services, combating invaders and diseases, laboratory support, etc. And also, which is very important, and I'm inviting you to look for the research project, because the European Union make in the past and have active a high number of consortiums in different programs doing an excellent work on research for related with bees. Well, one of these works put in place, which are the reasons for the pollinator decline that we are conscious and observing. I will not give you a big detail, but just I will review quickly. There is a problem of habitat loss. There are some factors described there. They are also very important action of pests and pathogens, basically varroa, but also another different things. Pollution, that the authors recognize that the very few information available. That means we need more research in this area related with heavy metals and pollution of soils and plants. And also, which is probably the more important thing, the impact of pesticides. I will go a little deeper in this, but they are also a concern related with the climate change, and of course, the differences in phenology and the synchrony of flowering and pollinators. Just to give you some examples, there is in general a discussion about the competition between solitary bees and honeybees. And here, this research showed that, for example, the mason bees, Osmia cornuta, depending on the number of nesting boxes, and this is you put nesting boxes to pollinate in the fields, and you can see that the response is, well, they are visiting, in the case of cherry orchards, they are visiting approximately 17% of the flowers. But if you put at the same time honeybees, they are visiting 70%. That means they are more effective pollinators. But the interesting thing is that we observe nest saturation in the case of the mason bees, but we didn't observe this in the honeybees. But if you combine both, the number of predicted cherry flowers that will produce fruit, you can see if they are not mason bees, 0. The trend of flowers, the percentage of sweet cherry fruit set is really not very much changed. not very much modified depending on the honeybee abundance. With 50, they increase, but if you arrive to 100, you can see that the response is also greater. That means really we need the collaboration of different pollinators in the nature. This research that is very interesting because related with my talk, the group of scientists from the POSH-B consortium, which is a European project, made an inventory of issues related with pollination, and they prioritized 21 different issues related with, you can see, pesticides and pollutants, political and trade influences, the predators and parasites, the management practices, crop modification, like, for example, or genetically modified organisms, the environmental stressors, and also the technology. And I listing here which they ranked according to this. For example, for them, the more important aspect today is emerging pathogens and predators, pesticides, extreme weather events, and these are basically threats affecting to the pollinators, but also we have opportunities offered by technology and in the aspect of monitoring the colonies, or also related with agrochemical formulation. You have more detail. For example, you can see here the varroa-resistant stocks, which is one aspect that will be commented, and also the inexperienced beekeepers, because mass media are fomenting the interest in the bees, and some of them are going to go into the beekeeping activities. Well, they are more activities, and I'm ranked here, which are the levers. That means how can we impact more or less? And you can see that for example, pesticides, it's the technology for the technology, of course, but also for these agrochemical formulations. But also you have the common agricultural policy of the European Union, or the directives and legislation of each country. Well, they did the same with, and they arrived to 21 issues that are also, you can see in this, are more political conditioned than conditioned by the technology. I will give you the opportunity to go to read the paper and obtain more information. But also we have, if we are really worried about the use of pesticides, well, we have different alternatives. We can use the conventional methods, or we can use a new approach, which is the integrated pest management. This example with watermelon is showing clearly that the colony weight change during different time in the period with honeybees or with bumblebees. You can see that if you use the integrated pest management, you maintain better the honeybees. The same for bumblebees. And you can see that the conventional, for example, the bumblebees disappear, or they decrease related with the evolution of time. Well, in this case, the data is related with cucumbers, beetles, because they want to control the watermelon and maintain less than 5 beetles per plant. And well, the big advantage, the big result, or the most interesting result, was that if you use the conventional methodology for controlling, you can see that the diversity of pollinators and the numbers of pollinators is lower when compared to this integrated pest management. And also you can see that some people say there are competition between our honeybees and solitary bees. You can see that when you give them the opportunity, they will work together and really pollinate very well. Well, and also this is a big advantage also for the beekeepers, because capped brood, you can see in green, is during the year bigger with this integrated pest methodology, and also, which is an important concern, the mortality of the bees is really reduced, not comparable with 25–30%, which is normally observed. And also you can see here that if you treat with a foliar application with pyrethroids, which are really not very aggressive, you can see that the mortality after the insecticide is very large. Also, a similar experiment conducted to compare traditional, conventional methodology for beekeeping or organic methodology using different treatments compared or with the organic and the conventional. In general, and I invite you to explore also this research, the hive survival increased near 3 times more, and honey production also increased. And you can see that the control, the conventional and the organic can have the same amount of yield of honey in the farm. Well, and also, which is very nice and very interesting, is that the biomarkers of immunity and the gene expression of immunity are improved when you are using this compared with, for example, a chemical-free treatment, which is really, if you are not treating the beehives, you are decreasing the survival and also the harvest of honey. Well, I'm going to finish, but I want to stress some take-home messages. Basically, the first one is that it's very convenient that the managed honeybees are considered as livestock species with a great environmental impact and also needing research and support. And I congratulate the Eaap for taking this species also into consideration. Also, honeybees population increase, but which is very good, but which is not good is that the ratio of hives to pollinator depending crops is going worse. Well, some solitary bees and honeybees need to be complementary, and we need more research to clarify this and defend both of them. In my opinion, the integrated pest management should be prioritized and implemented in Europe, basically. And of course, managed organically, honeybee colonies are as healthy and productive as conventional, and we stress the use of them. Also, I was not talking about, but alternative varroa treatments should be explored, simplifying, reducing the chemical impact. And of course, alien pests and diseases will increase in the future, and we need to also apply them the integrated control, which will be probably the only way to defend our bees. And finally, we need applied research and also transfer all this applied research to the honeybee stakeholders, because they are really responsible of our environment and our honey and bee industry. I want to thank you for your attention, and also to my colleagues in the group of UABee research. And also I'm putting here an QR in entrance to our UABee webpage, and I will be very happy giving answer to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gerardo. And for everyone, the chat is always open, even during the presentations, to write any questions. We have 2 or 3 minutes for a question. I don't see any at the moment. You may write them down, or I have a general question for you, Gerardo, maybe to open the floor. What do you think about welfare and code of conduct on honeybees? Do you think there is the need of some guidelines, or on your point of view on this?
Yes, you are totally right, or the people putting this question is totally right, because this is one thing to be put it in place. We need codes of conduct, protocols of good practices, and of course, we need to explore the indicators of welfare in insects and specifically in bees, because some practices are not really comfortable for them, and also with our ethics approach.
Yeah. Let me see any comments from the floor. So you can write the questions in the Q&A, but I see one in the chat rather than in there. They are asking, but you just have 1 minute. If you want to reply, we can go later. If what you think would be an alternative Varroa treatment, if there are any in your idea that are worth exploring.
Well, personally, in my group, we are doing research with a new approach that was put in place in Germany, which is lithium salts, and the results, which are pending, but I will be very happy if in the future we conclude the paper and we present them. But there is an agreement that lithium chloride, for example, can help us in a simple and very effective way. But I'm saying this, but there are more other approaches which are not exactly chemical, because this is you can find lithium, for example, in water, seawater. That means it's very common. No? Okay.
Thank you very much, Gerardo.
Okay.
I leave you for the time being.
Exactly.
Thank
this
you
is
very much.
also my time to make a chair, and to also to introduce. Well, you will to introduce Nicola.
Okay, so you can take
speaker.
a break and we will exchange later.
Thank you very much
Thank you, Gerardo, and it's a real pleasure to introduce to you all Nicola Bradbear. Nicola is a leading authority in apiculture and in environmental sustainability. Nicola founded and is the director of a nonprofit organization called Bees for Development, who works in more than 50 countries worldwide, trying to decrease poverty and increase biodiversity with beekeeping. So this has been her actual activity during all her career. And Nicola today has just 20 minutes, but will give a talk. And the talk will be on the 10 reasons why beekeeping is perfect to reduce poverty and increase biodiversity in rural settings, as is for her experience. So thank you for agreeing and giving the talk, and the floor is yours, Nicola.
Thank you, Giulietta. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted and honoured to have been invited to give this talk. As Giulietta says, I've just got 20 minutes, and it's a short time to give you a few glimpses of beekeeping doing really wonderful things for people around the world. Now, let me just share my screen with you. There we go. So I'm going to give you just 10 reasons why beekeeping is really a wonderful way to support rural livelihoods. We need to find ways for people to create income without destroying the habitat. And if we just think of the terrible problems we're facing, poverty, deforestation, climate change, loss of biodiversity, water shortage, these problems all kind of go along together. They're all interrelated. And it may seem like I'm exaggerating, but actually honeybees are a fabulous help in addressing all of these issues. And it's something that people can do to help themselves, but also to address the greater issue of biodiversity loss. So I want to show you a more cheerful picture here of actually what beekeeping is doing in rural livelihoods. And there are so many lovely stories to tell you, but I can, as I say, just give you a little glimpse this afternoon of some of them. And maybe as you're watching, you're thinking that you might like to become a beekeeper. Well, I would encourage you because as Gerardo has just said, we need more people taking care of bees. There's plenty to do, and everybody can do something. Actually, even without being a beekeeper, you can abandon your pesticides and help to maintain biodiversity, because we have to do this to address climate change. So as Giulietta just said, my NGO has just two aims. One is to reduce human poverty and to increase biodiversity. Those are equal aims, and that's what we have been working towards all these years. We work in many different countries. The bees are different. The people are doing beekeeping for different reasons. It's not one size fits all. And in these few minutes, I can't tell you about all of them. I'm just going to give you a few glimpses of beekeeping playing its part in rural livelihoods. So here we go. Here's reason number one. As Gerardo has so nicely just been explaining how essential pollination is for life on Earth, but also for our own food crops. Of course, plants are rooted to the spot, and they need the male gametes to reach the female flowers. And here's a nice tree, and the next tree of this species is across the valley. And this is what insect pollinators do. They take pollen from the male anthers to the female stigmas and enable viable seed to be produced. Here's a beekeeper. He's in Azerbaijan. He is doing what many beekeepers do around the world. He's selling his honey by the roadside. But he's also selling all these fruit crops. And actually, the bees produce honey, but they're also involved in the production of all these fruit that he's also selling. So it's really pollination that is the great value of bees. Gerardo just gave us the nice figure of 15 billion euros in Europe. That's the value of pollination. And this is far more money than is involved in the honey trade in Europe. This is really the important part of beekeeping. But the funny thing is that the beekeeper quite rarely actually gets paid for the pollination. But the pollination service of bees is the most precious thing they do. So that's number one on my list, really. Even just in coffee, if we just take that one commodity, in coffee, when the berry is optimally pollinated, you have 50% more berries, and you have higher quality berries. So they contain 50% more of the delicious oil that makes coffee so lovely. So you get more crops and better quality crops when they have optimal pollination. And it's not just about our crops. Our whole ecology and landscape actually depends on these insect pollinators. Of course, not just honeybees, but many species of insects. But on the whole, insects don't interest people, and we can't get people to care for insects as a whole, but we can get people to care for honeybees. It's a way into people really interacting with insects because they get something back from them. So my number 2 reason is that beekeeping provides food, income, and medicine. So really one service, which is pollination. And sometimes in some countries, beekeepers can be paid for pollination services of bees, but very often they're not acknowledged for the pollination service. And the beekeeper has to create income primarily from honey, but also sometimes importantly from beeswax. And then there are less common products like propolis and pollen that can be harvested from bees. Every society knows about honey, of course. It's written about in the Bible and the Quran. It's a high carbohydrate food, a useful source of nutrition where people are living on limited diets with poor nutrition. It has micronutrients and trace elements in it. In many societies, it is still valued as a medicine. And of course, it's a source of income locally, nationally, and internationally. Beeswax is also a valuable commodity, not always harvested by every beekeeper, but for many beekeepers, it's an important product. It has many uses and industrial uses. And for example, some of the beekeepers we work with in Africa can produce very clean beeswax that is completely free of residues. There's no agrochemical residues in it. There's no beekeeping residues in it. And this is what cosmetic companies want for making organic certified lipsticks and other things. So it's a valuable product from beekeeping. And as I say, honey can be traded at the local level, at your door, as much honey is still sold throughout the world at the beekeeper's gate, and it can be sold nationally. And of course, there's an international global market for honey. Propolis is how honeybees achieve their social immunity. Propolis is resin collected by bees from trees. Plants produce resin as a medicine to protect themselves when they're damaged, and bees collect that resin and they line all of the inside of their nest with propolis. And so humans sometimes collect that too. On the left is a man in Macedonia sitting in the market with his balls of propolis for sale and a couple of jars of honey. But it's also sold worldwide as a health food and a tonic, and in many different ways. And pollen is also harvested from honeybees. This is a more minor product, but it's possible to harvest some pollen and to sell it onto the market. But for very poor people, beekeeping is wonderful because bees can be obtained free of charge from the wild. They collect swarms. Equipment can always be homemade. And unlike other livestock, bees don't need feeding, actually. Bees produce their own food. The best bees you can use are always local bees, and all the beekeepers we work with would collect swarms. And then once they're established in beekeeping, maybe they will split their own colonies, but they don't need to ever spend money on buying bees. Here is a beekeeper local to me here in the Wye Valley in South Wales. He certainly would make all his own equipment. He would do that in the winter when it's not the beekeeping season. But the people we work with make very beautiful beehives for nature-based beekeeping, all without cost. And of course, these people who are practicing subsistence agriculture, many of them are already beekeepers. There are actually millions of subsistence beekeepers in the world, making their own beautiful beehives. I haven't got time to explain how this beekeeping works, but it's a very interesting and different way of beekeeping compared with how we do it in Europe. Bees find their own food. They harvest nectar and pollen in flowers. If we didn't have bees to do this, there's no other kind of animals that can harvest these resources. So really beekeeping is a bonus crop. You don't need land for beekeeping. You don't have to do beekeeping instead of something else. You can do it in addition to something else. You don't need land for bees. You can keep your hives around the house like this home in the Western Himalayas with about 30 beehives. Many poor people are landless. Then, of course, beekeeping creates lots of other employment, people who make clothing for beekeeping, people who make value-added secondary products like candles and skin cream and all sorts of different products for sale. And here are very often families working in the beekeeping sector with everybody doing a slightly different part of it. Some of them managing the bees, others making secondary products. This is a lady in Ethiopia who just makes beautiful beehives for sale in the market. Number 6, beekeeping gives people incentive to maintain their habitat. So when it comes to forest beekeeping, the beekeeping is non-extractive. It doesn't harm the forest. It goes on year after year. This is some beautiful forest in southwest Ethiopia. You can't see, but it's full of beehives. A fantastic natural resource use. The beekeepers distribute their hives throughout the forest and are harvesting that honey year after year without damage to the forest. That's what the beautiful beehives look. This is extensive nature-based beekeeping and very highly efficient resource use. This idea that beekeeping saves forest is catching on. Here's some Australian honey. It's selling in London for £500, about $500 for 250 grams, on the premise that buying this honey saves precious forest near Perth in Australia. Beekeeping is inclusive. It can be done by men, women, young and old, everybody. Here's a beekeeper up a tree in Ethiopia situating a beehive. Women can't really do that in that society, so we do different kinds of beekeeping with women, often with top bar hives like this. Beekeeping integrates well with other activities. You don't need to feed bees every day or see to them every day. You can do it when other work allows. I haven't really got time to show you, but on our website, there's a lovely video of this lady, Annette in Ethiopia, explaining how beekeeping helps her family. It's resilient. Here's a beekeeper in northern Iraq who's using old ammunition boxes to make beehives. There are beekeepers in Chechnya using land that is full of landmines, but it's not possible to have any other agriculture there, but bees can forage on the flowers and produce safe honey. To go back to my picture I showed at the beginning of a very dry area, even when riverbeds are dried up, these acacia trees are on the edge of survival. So they flower to produce seed. And when they flower, they produce nectar. Their roots are down in the water table. And beekeepers are still able to go on practicing beekeeping, even in the most dire, difficult circumstances. And finally, my number 10 good reason is that beekeeping is scalable. You can start off with a hive or two, and then as you are interested, you can actually quite easily expand and scale up. Beekeepers can copy their neighbors. There's no sort of equipment inputs. They can completely do everything themselves, so they can scale up without some external donor being involved. And finally, here's a lovely project we're just working on at the moment in Ghana. This was the area of Ghana where all the illegal charcoal was produced from forest. The men that were producing charcoal have realized that beekeeping is actually easier than charcoal making. It's not illegal, and they're now producing tons of honey and beeswax, and it will soon be exported. So these are my 10 good reasons: biodiversity, economy, It's easy to get started with low cost. It's highly sustainable, creates lots of other employment opportunities, gives people financial incentive to maintain habitat, any age, any gender. It integrates well with other activities. It can be done even in the most difficult of circumstances, and it's scalable. So those are my 10 good reasons. And look, they spell beekeeping to help you remember. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicola. It was a wonderful presentation.
Oh, it's a bit quick.
No, well, this was a first webinar. We wanted to touch many subjects. I'm waiting for people to ask you any questions, but I think you said it all very clearly, so there are no questions in the meantime. Shall we use these last minutes to ask you something different? Let's say, what is for you the main challenge in starting beekeeping in these countries? So what was, in your experience, the main challenge in the different countries?
I think the most important thing is to do beekeeping with people who want to do beekeeping. You can't force people to become beekeepers. Many people are scared of insects and so on. So things work best when the initiative comes from them. You know, people want to begin beekeeping and you help them. It's no good going somewhere and deciding that people should become beekeepers. The incentive has to come from that side, I would say.
I agree. Gerardo, maybe there
yes.
is a...
Please. Well, first of all, congratulations, and especially because you maintain it very well also the time, which is not easy in this presentation. We are perfectly on time. Well, which is your opinion about the approach of professional or family beekeeping? Because this is, we observe in Europe that there are pressure to be more professional and to reduce the hobbyist, which is your position related with this.
No, the world is full of small-scale beekeepers, and they kind of go under the radar and they are ignored by ministries of agriculture, and because beekeeping is very widespread but very small scale. So it's not a crop that is evident like coffee or tea or something. It's everywhere but on small scale, and that beekeeping is so precious to those people. So I would rather be in favor of a large number of small beekeepers rather than a small number of large beekeepers.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I will go with the following speaker and introduce you, Professor Per Kryger from the Aarhus University. Professor Kryger is a very well-known, renowned expert in the field of honeybees, with the years of research in bee health, studies done in the bees and their impact on ecosystems, and also in sustainable agriculture. Well, the Professor Kryger also collaborated with international institutions and published numerous influential papers. And well, today it will be giving us through a recent survey on diseases in honeybees in Denmark. He will talk also in the name of Annette Bruun Jensen, which is unfortunately sick, and he will not take part in this presentation. Well, Pierre, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Waiting for the presentation to really start, I think. I think it's okay now.
Yes, yes, right.
Good. So thank you for the opportunity to present some quite recent results from my work together with my colleague, Annette Bruun Jensen, As you said, we are conducting a survey of honeybee diseases in Denmark. We are aiming to look at 380 samples in 23, 24, and 25. Obviously, we don't have data from 25. I will not mention any data from 24, but concentrate on the data from last year in this presentation. And Annette, as you said, is sick. I see her. She's on the list of panelists, but her voice this morning was very coarse. So I think I will try to do the talking, and maybe Annette can help with the replies to answers in the end. So we have been looking at viruses in Denmark over many years. And as you can see from this slide, we have looked at 6 different viruses: sackbrood virus, deformed wing rest type A, type B, acute bee paralysis virus, black queen cell virus, and chronic bee paralysis virus. And I will speak mostly about the ones that are causing us the most problems in Denmark. That is sackbrood, deformed wing virus, acute bee paralysis virus. The others are getting quite rare, and we are quite rare, and we don't have so much biological information about them. So deformed wing virus is clearly linked to Varroa. Over the last 10 years, we have seen a replacement. We used to look for deformed wing virus type A, and I actually skipped looking for type B because we never really found it. And then I had a student, and we were looking at some bees from Africa, and I said, we found nothing. So I said, well, let's try and look for type B. And well, we found type B then again. And then I said, well, let's look at some Danish samples. And then we discovered it was also present in the bees in my institute. And over the last 10 years, basically, we have seen a demise of deformed wing rest type A, whereas type B has become the most widespread. I just go back to the figure. You can see nearly 95% of the colonies are positive for deformed wing rest type B. So this is an interesting observation. You think something drastic is happening when one virus is replacing another one. We all remember COVID, that we had Delta and Omicron and all of these different names. So what is the case with the bees and the deformed wing virus? I would like to say that the evidence is not clear-cut, but there is a weak replication of the virus in Varroa mites, and that seems to be an important factor in why we see now deformed wing virus type B, because it has simply outcompeted type A, not so much in the bees, but in the mites. So it seems that Varroa is becoming a secondary host to this virus, but we do not, unfortunately, we do not see that the mites are affected negative by this virus. They seem to be thriving just as well as we used to see it. And the deformed wing virus gets its names from some typical deformations of the bees. The wings are much smaller. Also, the rest of the body can be reduced in size, and a less obvious symptoms to the eye, but very obvious to beekeepers in springtime, is that the lifespan of adult bees is reduced. And when you find colonies are dwindling in springtime, it's often that this is caused by deformed wing virus affecting the bees. And just to show you an example of the virus, here from a colony, you see a bee in the center of the picture with really deformed wings, and another bee attending to this bee, licking off it. Probably this is another way that the virus can spread, but the general idea of spread of deformed wing virus is that the mites are transmitting the virus from one bee to the next bee. I'll jump to the second virus, which is something that we find in Denmark quite a bit. It was about 20% of the samples we had from 23. In fact, I speak of acute bee paralysis virus. If you go into the literature, you find that there's 3 different similar related viruses. I just, to make it more simple, call it acute bee paralysis virus. There's also Kashmir bee virus and Israeli acute paralysis virus. They are not the same, but they are so similar that the symptoms are indistinguishable for us humans, and only with molecular technology can we tell them apart. What is a typical symptom is that the larvae are affected and they lay on the side of the cells, not in the bottom. And if you think about that, that would probably suggest that the transmission to these bee larvae is from the nurse bees, not from varroa mites. However, we also know that varroa mites play a major role in transmission of acute bee paralysis virus. In the brood phase, when the cells are sealed, the varroa mites invade the cells and can transmit not only deformed wing virus but also acute bee paralysis virus. And you can find that the bees detect these sick bees, and you find them in front of the hive in piles when you have a severe infection of acute bee paralysis virus in your bee colony. And the same a little bit happens with deformed wing virus. Your colony will dwindle. I think this is one of the reasons we called it in the past colony collapse disorder. The adult bees, when they are quite sick, they will leave the hive, and I have a number of occasions observed a colony being full of a bee box being full of bees, and a few weeks later it's gone. All of the bees have left the hive, and often before the winter. So the two viruses are related to varroa mites, but the symptoms on the colony level are quite different. Acute bee paralysis virus will kill the colony fast, whereas deformed wing virus will be killing it in springtime. Instead of developing, the colony will dissolve and disappear. And just an example of how the symptoms can look. Here you see a bee licking of a larvae that's pulled out of the cell. On the left in the picture, you see a bee laying on the side of the cell. And obviously, these larvae are not yet attractive to varroa mites, so they have become infected by feeding of nurse bees. So we jump to, well, just to sum it up, there is a link between the number of varroa mites in the colonies and the number of viruses. This is obvious for deformed wing virus and for acute bee paralysis virus. In Denmark, the beekeepers are really struggling to control varroa mites, and in my view, mainly because they are not looking for varroa mites. However, if you close your eyes to varroa mites, the problem doesn't disappear. We, Annette and I, have tried over the last years to educate beekeepers, to teach them to monitor for varroa mites. It's a slow process. It takes a long time to convince beekeepers to change their ways, but we are trying to improve the situation. So I will jump to another virus, sac brood virus. This is a typical symptoms when you open the cells. You see larvae laying in the cells, often with the mouthparts pointed upwards, but they have sunken in. Water have evaporated from their bodies, and they are full of virus particles. And normally a bee larvae should be pure white, and these are clearly have changed the color. This is in fact the oldest known virus in honeybees from 1907, long time before we learned about varroa mites. We know that it's some small particles that were described in 1964. The transmission for this virus is from bee to bee or from nurse bee to larvae. That's an oral transmission route. It affects the larvae and will kill the larvae, as you saw in the picture before pupation. It's quite easy to recognize on the brood stage. However, adult bees are also affected, and one of the symptoms of infection by sackbrood virus is that they decrease the pollen foraging of the bees. Why do we have so much sackbrood virus in Denmark? Well, beekeepers notice it mostly in the time of the year when there's a shortage of pollen in the nature. Not all colonies are affected, but when it's a serious problem, the brood can become extremely patchy, and sometimes keepers suspect a bacterial disease called American foul brood. And this is a picture of a colony where half of the brood has died or vanished from sackbrood disease. The comb was full of eggs, but only half of the cells have now pupated. The picture doesn't disappear. Sorry for that. So not all beekeepers notice this, and part of the reason is that they don't look into the colonies often enough. They forget to check for they are so busy harvesting honey that they don't notice that they have a disease in their bee colony. One of the things that we have noticed with the data that we have collected is that we actually find more of the virus, and we find higher titers of the virus in adult bees than in brood. This is a bit funny when you think that it's called sackbrood disease and not adult bees disease. We think, or we hypothesize, that the infected brood, when the bees, through hygienic behavior, try to remove the bees, they can become contaminated by removing the dead brood, because we find a lot more bees with a high titer in the brood, in the adult bees, than we find in the brood. So it's a difficult disease to understand, and I think we still need to work quite a bit on that. Then I put in a pause because I was supposed to change also this. We were supposed to change the speaker with Annette now, but I think I will just take a break now. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to reply.
There are some questions for you, and I've seen that
Wow.
Annette replied already, yes.
I also replied to one of them.
Okay, so we will not.
To the one of them. One of the questions was very complicated, so I will try to reply by email, because that will take too long time. So and I'm not an expert in Pakistan, so
no, it's not easy. But do you like some?
Oh, to Nicola, there is a question. We can use it because I think everybody is online anyways. They can hear us or not if they are not away for a break. Jean Daniel asks, what is the situation in South America with the Africanized bees? Is this an opportunity or a threat for small beekeepers?
Right.
Nicola, this is a good question.
Should I answer that now?
Jean Daniel, are you online, or maybe we can wait? Oh, he is online.
Yeah.
So if you want to take this opportunity of these minutes to reply, I think we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
It's a very interesting thing what happened, that African bees were introduced to South America. You know, in a way, a kind of catastrophic thing. That was the result was millions and millions and millions of dollars spent, and still being spent, in trying to control these bees. But of course, they survive. Tropical African bees survive very well in tropical America, and absolutely it's an opportunity for small-scale beekeepers, and the beekeepers there have learnt how to manage these bees very well. And Brazil, I think Gerardo showed some figures in recent years. Brazil, because the the government was very clever. They didn't license chemicals for controlling Varroa, and these Africanized bees have evolved in the presence of Varroa, and now Brazil is one of the biggest exporters of organic honey. Very, very good and clean honey. So actually, it was a mistake to introduce tropical African bees to the Americas, but the people have made the best of it, really. The only unfortunate thing is that less emphasis has been put on the indigenous bees, on stingless bees. If the same millions of dollars had been spent on working with the indigenous stingless bees, then maybe today's industry would be based on those bees instead of on the African, I call them African bees because they're African bees.
Maybe I can add to that, having spent some 6 years in South Africa myself. The African bees are quite healthy. They are everywhere. Like Nicola presented, you put up an empty box and sooner or later a swarm will find it and move into it. Protective clothing is essential with African bees. They know how to defend themselves, so you have to be careful. But they seem to be extremely healthy. So it's a great opportunity to work with these bees.
Well, this is one aspect that when you compare Italian bees or broadcast bees in Spain with our Iberienses, they are like bullfighting animals. They are more aggressive than you are, that you have in your countries. That means for us, it's imperative to use gloves and be protected, no?
Yeah. Production-wise, African bees are very productive. If they have the resources in the environment, they will produce a lot of honey. And if there's no honey, they will just move on. They will leave you. So yeah.
And are they easy to identify?
They are the only people. They are the only bees there. People have tried to introduce European bees in Africa. It's a complete failure. They are waking up so late in the morning. The African bees have already emptied all the flowers. I mean, it does not work. It does not work. Yeah. They are too slow for Africa, our bees.
Okay.
I can see Nicola is making some. You have had the same experience.
Yes, but what tricks people is that, of course, they look very similar. European bees and African bees, they're the same species, but their biology and their behavior is so very, very different.
Yeah, the African bees are smaller. When you just look at them, you notice they are smaller. And when you look at the colony in a box, you see them actually flying faster than European bees. But
to the man in the street, they look the same, really.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
But their behavior is so very different.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 minutes to go. No, is that right? Yes.
There is another question on how to make people aware of the importance of beekeeping from India.
Yes, I saw that.
It's a nice question. We can reply.
I mean, this meeting is a nice option when it will go online. It's a nice option, but maybe we need something even more basic and in more local languages.
Yes.
Yeah.
that was what we were discussing, Pierre, when we met in Italy, the idea of there's not a lot of training on beekeeping at any level. So many people learn by themselves, but there is a need and the wish to learn a little bit more on bees.
Yeah.
I will close the Q&A and then Gerardo, would you like to introduce again Pierre? And
Yes,
start again?
just to restart. Okay. Hello, we are restarting. Hello, we are restarting with the webinar. And it will be the second part of the presentation of Professor Kryger from Aarhus University. Okay, Per, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Yes, waiting for the first slide. Yes, so as I already mentioned, I'm doing this presentation on my own and on behalf of also Annette Bruun Jensen, who is unfortunately fallen sick today. So I'll try to do my best and try to get the main message across. So in Denmark, we have a long history of fighting bee diseases. We started in 1909. The beekeepers met and decided to take action to get rid of American foul brood. And it was really very practical work. Here you see a picture from 1909 where they had a meeting. All these beekeepers had signed up for an 11-day course, and they went out together to look at bees together, determine when is a colony healthy, when is it sick. There was no lab involved at that time. So it was really just a matter of standardizing the field diagnosis and be in agreement. This is a healthy colony, this is a sick colony. Of course, this was good. There was a rapid response and very rapid eradication. Once they had decided this colony is sick, they kill it and get rid of it, or they would try to cure it in the past by removing all the brood. On the negative side, there was a chance or risk of I would say, of misidentification, and not all beekeepers were happy to get the bee inspectors, they were called, to visit their colonies because they may lose their colonies. The word quickly got out that this was not harmless visits. Since then, we have improved the methods. We can detect many more pathogens. I just spoke about viruses. Here I will speak about bacterial and fungal diseases. And we can detect the diseases even before the symptoms appear. The beekeepers are happy because that means that they can take prevention measures. If they know that as a pathogen is present in the colonies, they can try to take action to avoid disease outbreak. But they are also unhappy because they get more things to worry about. It's sometimes beekeepers like you and me prefer to be ignorant rather than to be over-informed. So here, a brood comb that was sent to my lab in Aarhus University, and we are doing the very simple test for American foul brood. You place a toothpick into a cell, and you try to pull out, and if you get a 2 centimeter long thread, the ropiness of the bee larvae, is most likely American foul brood. The full diagnosis also involves microscopy. You can take it even more advanced to do PCR or to do growing in the lab. But in general, when I see this brown, gluey mass, it has a characteristic smell. The microscope is already just for safety measure. It's pretty easy to recognize. So the goal in 1909 was to eradicate American foul brood and European foul brood. What have we achieved since 1909? Well, with a lot of effort for beekeepers, we were able to define the problem. And in fact, in the 1940s, we had more than 2,000 outbreaks of foul brood, not really distinguished between European and American foul brood. And we started to work on combating the problem. And last year we were down to 14 outbreaks of American foul brood, not a single one of European foul brood since 2005 in Denmark. But can we really trust these numbers? Because this is beekeepers send us samples when they think their bees are sick, but does this actually reflect the real numbers in the country? So we conducted a survey. There was a question before. Have we looked at American foul brood, European foul brood in the same samples? Yes, we have. We have here 382 samples that were looked for European foul brood, American foul brood, and child brood. Or American foul brood is on the top. And you see we have 6 cases out of 382. It's about 2%, next to nothing. European foul brood, we did not have any cases, or we did not find the bacteria a single time in the survey, whereas child brood, we actually found in nearly half of the colonies that we looked into. So yes, we've seemed to have good control over American foul brood, very good control over European foul brood, but child brood caused by Escophera apis, a fungal disease, is evading us at the moment. So how did we reduce foul brood to a low level? Education. Education is good. It has no residues in the honey, and the bees are not affected negative in any way. So educating beekeepers what to do is an important, crucial point. And we have actually a course in Denmark for beekeepers. About 10% of the beekeepers have taken this course, which means that they can recognize the symptoms of American foul brood, European foul brood, child brood, and other diseases. And when they take this course, they are allowed to fill in documentations for the transfer of colonies, either between 2 locations or between 2 beekeepers. So that's the award that they get from taking this course. They are now qualified as skilled beekeepers that can move or sell bees. Then they also learn on the course. This is something that I'm stressing even more in the course in the last years, how to prevent disease transmission. What can they do to avoid spreading disease? How can they avoid getting infected? And one of the main things that we do in Denmark is we melt a lot of wax. Wax melting is a thriving business in Denmark. Almost all the frames in the colony are removed at the end of the season. So the bees are wintering on new frames every winter. And in spring, all the expansion is done by wax foundation, not old combs that were somewhere stored. And a good colony can build out 30 colonies or more, 30 frames or more in a single season. And this is one of the ways that we prevent bringing disease with old combs back into the colonies. There's a reason why it's called American foul brood, not because the bacteria occurred first in America, but disease was first noticed in America because they invented the moving frames, so they could recycle combs for many years. And the one organism that really benefited from that was not the beekeeper, it was not the honeybees, it was the bacteria, Bacillus larvae. So by getting back to renewing their wax on a yearly basis, we have reduced American foul brood to a low level. Still, we have been doing that for a long time. We did notice in the mid-90s an increase in the number of American foul brood, and beekeepers started to worry, and they started to breed bees for hygienic behavior. They used a freeze-killed brood to test the hygienic behavior of colonies, and the breeders in Denmark are monitoring the hygienic behavior in the colonies. And in fact, since about the year 2000, we see a steady decline in the number of cases of American foul brood, going down to 14 in this current year. So things have improved, and hygienic behavior is relevant for American foul brood, for European foul brood. But what about child brood? So here you have some two stages of the fungal disease in the colony. On the left, you see a mummy, a bee larvae that has been completely digested by the fungus, and the fungus has been able to reproduce and produce spores. These black dots that you see on the mummy are the spores and will spread and infect new bees. On the right side of the picture, you see an earlier stage of sackbrood disease. The hyphens of the fungus are all over the body of what should have become a bee. And in spite of all our breeding for hygienic behavior, we still have a problem with childbrood. We don't know exactly why. It's the bees are hygienic, the beekeepers are hygienic, and still we find childbrood coming in as a quite a serious problem, a high prevalence, and also quite serious outbreaks in some of the colonies. We, Annette and I, wonder if climate change is a factor in this. And another thing that we are quite aware of is that we have a number of mating stations across Denmark where there is a risk of inbreeding. And if the beekeepers are not careful, they can increase the frequency of unfavorable traits. Bees that are more susceptible to childbrood disease can become more frequent in Denmark. Maybe this is part of the explanation. So I want to say thank you for today's meeting, for everybody attending, to the beekeepers who sent us the many samples, and the Ministry for funding. And I need to remind everybody to come to Denmark in 25. In Copenhagen, we will host the Apimondia 25. So look out for advertisements. We look forward to meet you all in Denmark next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Per. We have time for some questions now. I will address. Yeah. Please, well, you give us the situation in Denmark, but which is your guess related with other countries in the European Union and in general, but in the specific European Union?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think the situation with we would like to get to zero both American and European foul brood. I think to be at zero with European foul brood for more than 10 years is quite unique. It's not a common disease in many places, but it's to not find a single case in 10 years or more than 10 years. I give credit to the beekeepers for renewing their wax on a regular basis. American foul brood is more difficult to control, but again, I think the beekeepers have done very good work, also on the breeding side of things. And then you get frustrated because you would also think childbrood should be positively affected by breeding purpose, by breeding for hygienic behavior, but that is not the case. And I do not think, I have not heard from other countries of similar outbreaks of childbrood. So I wonder if our breeding for gentle bees, for honey producing bees, have neglected to look for susceptibility to childbrood. This is a working hypothesis that we're trying to clarify at current, and hopefully we will solve that problem.
And what about vaccination? Can we expect something?
No, there are some trials on vaccinating honeybees for American foul brood. The data are not very stable, I would say, not widely accepted in the community. We need to see more facts before. And I think this is very much developed for the American market, because in America, beekeepers use antibiotics to control bacterial diseases. In Europe, this is a banned situation. You cannot use antibiotics. So if you are used to spending money on keeping disease away from your bees, vaccination is okay. If you're not used to that, we have other ways to deal with the situation. Hygienic beekeeping is low tech. Everybody can do it. You don't need a vaccination to deal with a simple problem like American foulbrood, European foulbrood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are also some questions pending on the.
I will look into that.
Yeah. And just to finish, if you will respond this on the chat.
Yeah.
But just a last question. What about the risk of buying industrial wax, no, or commercial wax? This can be also a risk for diseases? Because we
Well,
talk about residues. Residues
yeah.
of,
So residues is a problem with beeswax
Right.
because it's basically fat and things will store in beeswax for a long time. But then again, the high turnover of beeswax in Denmark, that they actually don't keep the frames for many years, but always exchange it is helpful. I know from Italy some methods that you try to purify wax by only using the new wax for making foundation for next year. But I don't have any data from Denmark on that aspect. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, and perfect, because we are still on time. Well, this is the time of Giulietta. Giulietta Minozzi, please.
Thank
Is your
you,
time.
Gerardo. I will just share my screen. So thank you all for being here till the last presentation. And I would like to close this webinar with a small 15 minutes talk to show you and explain you a bit of how the honeybee genetics is and if there is breeding in honeybees and how it's applied. Mainly because bees have a different genetics compared to all the livestock species we've seen in EAP and in general. So this is just a brief overview. So the genome of the honeybee is available since 2006, like many other livestock species, and it was, like for all, a big collaborative effort to arrive to the reference genome. It is a very small genome, so compared like to the human, it's just 1/10 in length. It has 16 chromosomes, no sex chromosomes, because sex determination in honeybees requires a specific locus, but I would need more than 15 minutes to go into these details. And it has only 10,000 genes, so much less than a bovine, let's say. But what is the particularity of the honeybee's genome? First, you would not imagine, but the honeybee has 1/3 of the immune genes, let's say, compared to Drosophila. That could be a good comparison. And that is why, that is due to the fact that bees have developed what is a social immunity behavioral traits. So much of their immune activities and protection is even on adaptation and social behaviors that are a first line of defense towards the individual honeybee immune genes reaction. Secondly, as you can imagine, honeybees have many chemical receptors for smell, so odorant receptors compared to any other, but very few for taste. And the honeybee genome obviously has genes for nectar and pollen utilization, as you can determine that from their physiology. Another interesting aspect of the genetics of honeybees is like as ants and wasps, honeybees exhibit what is called haplodiploidy. What does that mean? It means that not all individuals, not all bees you see in a colony are diploid like other animals, so they have two ends. But in this case, we have the females of the bees that are diploid and the males that are only haploid. So before going into telling you the genetics in honeybees, I would like to take a step back and maybe bring you into the description of a colony from a genetic point of view. because maybe many of you still don't know this. So we all know that honeybee are social insects and live in colonies, in hives, and their task is divided by the sex of the individual and by their age. So they are divided in castes. Within each colony, we have just one queen that is a reproducing individual. And at the beginning, let's say, of the spring of the season, the entire colony is composed of 50,000 bees, let's say, talking about typically in Italy what could happen. Within this 50,000 bees, mostly all of them are females and just few are males, because males are present only in few moments of the year. So these are the castes. So within the bees, we have 3 different castes. We have the queen, that is much larger than the other individuals. She lives 2 to 7 years. And she is the only one who will lay eggs. All the worker bees, the other 50,000 individuals in the colony, are their daughters. They have a very short lifespan. So the workers and the queens are both females. And then we have the drones that you see here in the figure that are a little bit larger and have very big eyes and live 3 months, more or less, 90 days. This is a picture of a queen bee, you can see here. And these are the worker bees that surround her. So she is a bit larger, and usually she is colored with a color that depends on the year. So each year the queens born that year are colored with a different color, and that gives you the age of the queen. She is diploid. She does not do anything colligated to food collection or other tasks, but she can lay up to 2,000 eggs per day. That is very much. And what does she do is she stays practically within the colony in the hive and flies out twice. The first one when she is virgin and to mate, she mates in the air. So she mates flying with 10 to 18 drones. And then she goes back in the hive where she lives all her life. And then she may go out to swarm if it happens. The worker bees are the typical bees that you actually see outside on the flowers. They're the smallest individuals. They have all a series of organs and structures to collect water, nectar, pollen, and they have organs to produce royal jelly and beeswax and so forth. They do not lay any eggs. They live around 42 days, depending on the season, summer or winter. And the nice thing and the important thing to know is that they can fly 5 kilometers far from where the colony is. That means that when you look around, you can find bees that come from very far away. From a genetic point of view, they are diploid and females, but not reproductive in this stage. And then we have the drones. Here you see in this figure a figure of a drone. They're very difficult to see. They are larger and they have big eyes. And they do what? They fly out of the hive looking for females to mate. And what they do is they can fly from 5 to 10 kilometers from their hive and locate themselves in congregating areas. So you find a lot of drones in specific areas and valleys, depending on the winds and temperature. And they will die after mating, obviously, because this is what happens. And as a matter of number, when they are present in the hive, they are in the number of 1,000 to 6,000 drones. So not that many compared to the workers, and they are haploid. So how does all this haploidiploidy work? So since the queens mate outside of the hive with 10 to 18 males and then come back, what they do is that they store the semen they collect in flight in a special structure you see here called spermatheca, where they can store the semen for all their lifetime. So a queen will produce a female by fertilizing an egg or produce a male without any fertilization. So within a colony, what we have is that all the progeny shares their maternal origin, but the paternal origin is composed of different paternal lines. And so when we talk about breeding or beekeeping, what do? We tend to look at the phenotype, how many kilograms of honey we produce and so forth on the colony. So we measure phenotypes, we evaluate different colonies based on what we see at the colony level. So not on an individual level like other animals, but the colony itself is very much composite. It's composed of different paternal lineages within the time and location. And differently from other animals, since the breeding is done in the air, if there is any breeding scheme applied, so if there is any selection in bees, one point is to see if we can control or if the male side can be controlled. So the question would be, in bee breeding, how do we control the paternal side since bees mate in air? And if there is selection, which traits are the most selected in beekeeping? So let's go in the traits, desired traits, the traits that are selected that may be the easiest to measure. Obviously, the first one is honey yield. So how many kilograms of honey does a colony produce? It's all the world around it, depending if you are collecting honey once or twice or 3 times. Then we have, that could be seen as a production trait. Then we have gentleness and calmness. These are behavioral traits that are selected, as Pierre said, very much even in the northern countries, because handling gentle and calm bees makes it easier for the beekeeper compared, let's say, to other bees. Then we have swarming, that is the tendency of a hive to colony to divide in 2 and a queen to fly out and a new queen to be formed. So it's the natural division of a colony. And then we have another trait that is more linked to disease resistance, that is hygienic behavior. Hygienic behavior lies into all those social immunity traits, where in this case, we can measure it in many ways, but it's the capacity of the worker bees that are in the colony to clean the colony from infected bees or larvae. And this has been measured and is kind of recorded quite frequently. So if these are the traits, how is beekeeping and bee breeding done, or if it's done? So we have different settings, different interests, and different economic interests. So we have many beekeepers who do not practice any selection and do not control the mating of their queens. They may be very linked with local breeds, and they may even have their honey for auto-consumption or to sell part of it, or may just keep bees for pollination. These are the many small beekeepers all around the world. On the same side, we have even professional beekeepers and bee breeders, and they do practice selection, and they work with an index composed of several traits, some of the ones I showed you before, and they use breeding values, but they use a modified blood version. This is because of the different paternal lineages within the same colony. But how do they control the paternal side of the breeding scheme, you would ask? So there are 2 main ways, so 3. Or they don't control it, they just select on the female side, but that lowers their selection. Otherwise, there are other 2 ways. The first one, you can believe, there is instrumental insemination applied to beekeeping since the 40s, 50s. It's a very difficult technique and delicate, and it is applied not all over, but it can be used to be sure that the male side is known. And the other one is the use of isolated mating stations. So what is an isolated mating station? I will show you a picture. So an isolated mating station in beekeeping can be used either for breeding purposes or for conservation purposes, so to conserve a specific genetic type or breed. And usually these are islands or valleys where beekeepers, specific beekeepers or associations, keep a specific genetic type. And what does this island or valley has to do? Actually, it has to be at least 10 kilometers far from another land to not allow drones for other genetic lines to be inserted, to mate with the females. Within these islands or valleys, beekeepers keep bees of a specific type, and the drones that will fly around in specific moments of the year will be of that genetic line. And beekeepers can bring their queens to be mated, and this is something that is used in several countries. So this is just a general overview, what happens and what goes on. What are the main points? The main point is the honeybee genome is available since many years. It's very small and actually very cheap to analyze from a genetic or next generation point of view, respect to other animals. It has very few immune genes. So you would think that catching those genes of immunity and resistance is easy, but actually we are looking for immune genes, but even a lot of behavioral genes at the same time. Honeybees show haplodiploidy that makes them particular compared to other species. We have that queens mates outside the hive, and that the colony is composed of different castes with different functions, different activities, and that within a colony we have different paternal lines that makes breeding, when applied, less straightforward. So with this, I thank you all for your attention today, and I thank all my colleagues with whom I've worked in the last years in the genetics of bees that are here in the screen, from University of Milan, CNR, breeding associations, and all the entities who's funded all my projects in these years.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Giulietta. We are very good on time. That means we have time for questions. I will introduce some of them, and we will wait for more. Well, there are some pending questions and are addressed to you. If you like, I read it. One question is, can inbreeding help in selection or not? Which is better here, inbreeding or outbreeding?
So I guess this is the typical question we always get when we talk about the genetics of honeybees, and it's very much linked with their natural tendency to mate with many drones. So naturally, they tend to increase the variability with the male side within their hives and colonies. Obviously, if we want to we have several activities running, and if we want to identify the genetics or identify the genes into specific traits, we need to go into a little bit more selected populations. So there are different aspects and sensibilities in this reply, depending on the needs.
Yeah, and in any case, the problem is, well, we don't know never if there is a free mating who is fertilizing our queens. No, is that right?
Exactly.
And also, there are two questions more. Well, which is better, to have a variety of drones or to have queens which are only fertilized by a single or inseminated drones? No,
genetic line. So this a bit lies within the same question as before. So it is a bit complicated to reply in a few minutes, but we know that bees share specific alleles that enable them to develop in males and females that are called sex alleles. and they need to be many to ensure a viability of the colony. So obviously, we need, even in selection purposes, to maintain a high level of diversity.
Okay.
So that is one point. The other point is we can use one genetic line or a specific genetic line if we want to build specific population for gene mapping or for breeding purposes too. So the purposes are different and the replies depends on the needs.
We were talking about Varroa. Varroa is a big concern for all of us. And are there some traits to measure Varroa resistance? And is easy to measure or is really complicated? What is your guess about that?
So talking with the Beekeepers and Bee Breeders Association, and I guess we've talked it through, all of us in our talks, we are experiencing high level of Varroa in all our bees infestation. And as Piers said, beekeepers should look at their hives a lot and try to understand what's going on in their hives. Other than that, there are different ways to test if there's the quantity of Varroa infestation, and many simple ways and more complicated ways, depending if there is a need to measure Varroa infestation on a big number of individuals. Or that could be the use as simple of a pin test. I don't know if many of you know, it's a way of testing hygienic behavior, but destroying a little part of the hive with a pin and see if the bees are quickly cleaning up or not. So that could be an easy way of measuring Varroa. And then there are more complicated ways, lab ways or molecular ways and so forth.
And there are also a question which arrives related with bees conservation and especially with local bees conservation. Is already places where you can, there are areas where local bees can be preserved or conserved with the purity of the breed?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm Italian, and I'd like to talk about the Ligustica bee, that is an Italian bee. So there are, since many years, let's say the first conservation areas for the bees have been islands. So the first one has been the island of Kangaroo, so in Australia. And lately in Italy, with funds from the ministry, we have created areas for conservation of the Ligustica bees in the islands of Sardinia and Ponza. So there is an effort into the conservation and the valorization of local bees, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Gerardo.
Okay. Well, this is all from my side. There are more questions because we have time, and now it's time to make a bigger discussion if the attendants like to do it with all the panelists. No, that means if you are interested, we will be attending the question. There are some of the answers are already published by the panelists, but if you have new questions, we have time to try to respond to all of you. I think there are one question which is difficult to understand related with meeting selection. I know.
Yes, I have seen, but I do not get the.
I know, understand. Yeah. If you can reformulate, that would be good. And they are really many questions. Currently, we have 26 questions, already responded 21st, and there are 5 pending of response, but in general, there are also people expressing thanks for the seminar, and we are really happy that a lot of people is still attending the meeting. Currently, there are more than 79.
So we are happy about how the webinar went. We I follow on what Andrea said at the beginning. Since we have few minutes, Andrea, if I don't know if someone wants to fill in the survey, if they are interested in knowing a little bit more on bees. And
And also it looks like Per wants also to add something.
yeah,
Andrea, please. Oh, Per, please. Go proceed, Per.
So I wonder if the question about meeting selection is about mating selection.
Mating. Yeah.
Yes, because it's a type of.
Right. Okay.
So how to use mating as a selection tool?
Yes, right.
Mm.
No, yeah, it was a spelling mistake. Yeah, right. Okay. Okay,
If I can
Andrea.
say a few words, since Giulietta and Gerardo invite me, I mean, checking the survey, we have all positive answers about having a workshop. So I think that I need to check with it because we work as Eaap mainly with voluntary people like Giulietta and Gerardo and Per and Nicola and everyone else here today are voluntary to make this pitch. If we find enough voluntary people looking to support Eaap, we plan to have a workshop likely either the end of 25 or because we need at least 1 year to organize it properly, or even better in 26. And yeah, I think that would be a nice, good idea. Might be the first one on this level or this type of topic related to beekeeping. So yeah, we are happy about this. We will discuss internally, and for sure, we have this long list of people that will be informed, and stay tuned on Eaap, and you got to know more. We start with the beekeeping. We are happy about this. This webinar was very successful, good speaker, large attendance, and we want to continue since the first step was the right one. I don't know, Gerardo, Giulietta, Per, what do you think? I'd like to have your opinion as well.
Well, we are very happy with the invitation to participate and really satisfied with the interest and the degree of participation. And really, as I was saying, because my talk was more on the current situation, this is a big concern for society and also a need of this approach, which is not only insect science, it's also a livestock species with a big interest in producing a food, which I'm sure about that. The demand will increase in the next years.
Yeah, I agree. Giulietta, Per, you want to say something?
I don't know, I can talk first. Or
Maybe I can say a few words, and then Giulietta can get the final words. So for me, this was a new experience. I enjoyed it. I think we presented a lot of scientific data. Maybe we also need some more basic beekeeping practice. Workshop, like you mentioned, could be a valuable tool to show how things are done, not just to tell about them, but actually to demonstrate things. And I think a lot of beekeepers learn better by hand and by eye than just by presentations or books. Yeah.
Yeah, that's clear. It's clear to me, which are very ignorant on the topic. So
yes, well, I'd like to follow up with Per. I really much enjoyed this webinar myself. I loved all the presentations. I really think that the honeybee should be taught more to everyone, all ages, all countries. Bees are so important. They, as Nicola said, they can be just few bees, few colonies per family, or maybe many for breeders, but we need knowledge, more knowledge, and a workshop, a basic workshop, really going, and could be ideal, I think. I think there is a lot of requests and need. So I'm happy of today. We gave an overview of everything, but it could be an idea to follow up.
Yeah.
okay, well, thank you very. I see people are leaving little by little because it's late,
Yeah.
more than 2
Yeah.
hours we are talking, and I want to with this. Oh, Federica, you want to say something?
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank all speakers and participants for this wonderful journey, because it was such a great experience for us. So thank you. And then, since I received several emails about the certificate of attendance, I want to remind participants that they can get the certificates going on the website where they register, and they just put their email address, and they will receive automatically by the system the certificate. So thank you so much.
Okay, Federica almost say everything. So I want to thank on behalf of EAP and everyone, all the speakers, Giulietta and Gerardo who chair the sessions, the participants who stay such a long time with us. And thanks again. And it was very nice and interesting and positive webinar. Looking forward to meet you again in real person, in reality, in direct person in a couple of years, 1 year, 2 years. Stay tuned with EAP and you'll know more about us. Thanks again.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.